Good evening and welcome to Flat Earth UK Live. Joining me tonight is a whole host of Flat Earthers keen and eager to tell you their great knowledge about the Flat Earth. So first and foremost, we've got Stephen Chess. How you doing, Stephen? You're on mute, my friend.
Good, how you doing, Nathan?
Not too bad at all. And we've got Robert Shortman. How you doing, Robert?
Good, thank you. Yeah. Hello, Nathan. How you doing?
Very well. And Adam Joseph Doherty. How you doing, Adam?
I am doing great, Nathan.
That's the hologram.
I'm sorry.
And last but not least, we've got Robin Poe. How you doing, Robin?
Just great. Happy Seattle Day.
Happy Seattle Day. That's a new one on me.
Yes.
What's Seattle Day?
Well, any day in the summer when it's cold is a Seattle day. So.
Ah, I see.
And it's cold here. I put my sweater on.
We've been chatting off air for probably about an hour and a half. While everyone else is tuned into Globebusters, we've got it playing in the background while we're nattering away over the top of it. And we quickly got to flat Earth proofs as we do. And I know, Robin, you were talking about extrapolating out some of the data from the Tracking the Sun on a Flat Earth project. Can you tell us what are your thoughts? No pressure.
Okay. Well, the thing that I was looking at, some of the data, reviewing some of the sun tracking videos, and one of the things I noticed was that it kind of actually, even though when the Kobayashi map, that one from Japan, first came out, I kind of poo-pooed it and said, I don't know, that looks lame. But then I started looking the way the sun movement over the Earth and the way it was appearing and setting and rising, it looks like that Kobayashi map may be pretty accurate, because especially the way it shows Australia tilting downwards a little bit to the southwest, and also where it shows the lower part of South America is further west as well. So I'm thinking, that might be well worth looking at in analyzing some of our sun tracking data. So that's what I was kind of interested in. And like I said, I've downloaded the Kobayashi map. I'm kind of picking it over. Also,
disclaimers in there, because just before you go on, Robin, a couple of disclaimers, because sometimes people will see a Gleason's or an azimuthal equidistant behind somebody and assume that we bow down to this like it's our god and we are, immovable in our belief in this map, and it's complete farce. Sometimes the best tool you have is nowhere near close to reality, but it's just the best thing you have to currently lay out or debunk. So in terms of the Gleason's, which was behind Antonio during the sun tracking, it's not that we're trying to prove that map, it's just a useful way of laying it out. I think you phrased it, it's almost like we're debunking the Gleason's in many ways while we're doing this. Would you agree, Robin?
I wouldn't call it debunking. I would call it, rather than calling it debunking, I'm saying that the sun tracking allows us to adjust the Gleason's map, because I don't think it's too far off. There are just some things where we need to kind of tweak it to make it more reflecting reality. And like, for instance, also I think that the northern countries are more scrunched up closer to the North Pole because of the way the sun was coming from the north a lot more in some of the northern, like in Massachusetts, in my own city of Seattle, it would come like, it was much more north. Should have been more like northeast, but it was coming more from the direct north. So I think that the northern countries are a little bit more scrunched up, and also some of the sunrise sunset behaviors in England, again, maybe it's tilted a little bit, maybe it's scrunched up a little bit more towards the north. So there are, rather than saying debunking the Gleason's, I'm just saying it's adjusting it and maybe truing it up a little bit, is what I would call it.
What do you think, Robert? You were there, you were taking down data.
I think it can only help refine the map. Any map that we've got, it will make it more accurate than less accurate, because we've got better data. So yeah, it's a fantastic positive thing that we've got that and done that, and we can do it in the future again or any time. So it's a good thing to do that, and especially be able to use that data, and then people start to model from that. And like Robin says, it can only make it more accurate and give us something better to go on.
Yeah, for definite. I mean, it'd be nice to do it in the future. I know Antonio's keen to do one the next equinox, and I think if we did do one again, we'd probably spend, rather than a week, maybe a month preparing people for what we actually require. Because I think it was a really good start, but it could be, even if we just honed it in on just sunset and sunrise, which was kind of the thing that I initially intended to get. We still had lots of people tuning in, 11 o'clock and so on and so forth, which is great. But for it to be really fine-tuned, you've got to get it right at the extreme edges, i.e. sunset and sunrise, to get better data. I don't know if you guys agree.
Yeah.
What if you get people that are closer to water, like the ocean or large body of waters, to do it, so you can see things more accurate?
Yeah, I definitely agree. That would be absolutely ideal. But then you push it a bit too far, and you may get people who won't tune in. There was a few people who tuned in with like rooftop. Gav, who's got a show at the same time, so tune into Gav as well if you can tune into both of us on Flat Earth After Party. But he had a rooftop view, and as far as I'm concerned, yes, there are certain effects that you're not going to get if you're looking across. But if you're elevated, you are going to still get that perfect sunset in terms of when it disappears. And I've seen this loads of times. It doesn't disappear behind a horizon. For me, more often than not, it disappears behind an atmosphere of chemtrails.
But no, one of the interesting thing is the absence of chemtrails during the sun tracking event. And we might want to do it again on the equinox, if nothing else, to clear the air of all those chemtrails.
Sure, it was odd. I've got to admit that there was a distinct lack of chemtrails. I mean, I know, again, Gav, he's getting featured a lot on this show. He caught a chemtrail, which normally on any other day it'd be like, so what? I've got a phone full of chemtrail footage. None of it worth publishing because there's so much of it about. And here in the UK, it was a bit of an eye-opener when Patricia came and said, wow, your chemtrails are miles heavier than ours. And I was like, really? We're just kind of used to them. You still look up and notice them and point out, or I do, point them out to people and have them shrug their shoulders. But apparently we've got heavier chemtrailing than you guys over in the States.
Oh yeah, definitely, because I've seen some of the photos you guys have shown, and it's crazy.
But clear blue skies on the sun tracking day. It was remarkable to have clear skies in such many locations, within that 24-hour space, and only have one or two. I only saw Gav's one, so that's the only one I really paid attention to. But everywhere else, people were going, look, clear skies, and there's the sun.
How did you get on, Stephen? You were hosting.
Yeah, I was wondering, when they do these things, if there's any reason, they leave them clear some days and they chemtrail us some others. It just doesn't really seem to have any pattern.
Why don't we just do chemtrail watches and see and announce ahead of time and see if they just disappear?
There was a few people in the comments that suggested exactly that. I mean, it would be considerably easier to orchestrate, in terms of putting up an advert saying tune in with your chemtrail, flooded. They'd never have less than 9 people in the room.
Mm-hmm. And just get a lot of advertisement for it and just see what happens.
I mean, I think it'd be useful if we did tracking the sun on again. If there was chemtrails, it'd be very useful just to show how bad it really is. But again, you kind of have to have a bit of a nod and a smile and think, why was there so few chemtrails on that day? So it is weird. Somebody said it, I think Wake the Sheeple said, it's because of the 4th of July celebrations the following day. But certainly here, there was plenty of chemtrails on the 4th of July.
Well, that's what I think it would be interesting to do it at the equinox. Just first of all, because to see the differences in the behavior of the sun, but I also think it would be interesting to see that, are we all going to have another chemtrail free day when we do the sun tracking?
When I looked the interesting thing I found, Robin, was when I looked into chemtrails years ago. There are hundreds of companies in America. There's, probably many companies in UK, and each are registered to do their geoengineering, stratospheric injection, whatever they want to do, testing wise, and carry out that. So so you could have governments doing it, and then private individual companies and corporations doing the same thing. So it would be a job to know when they're all doing it, and if they could coincide to not do it together, that would be a feat for them. But I don't know. It's interesting because there's you can just kind of Google how many companies there are, and it's quite staggering. Yeah.
Well, it'd be interesting to see if it happened again where we host a sun tracking event and then no chemtrails.
Well, that's it. They might be all under one government kind of, order to say, well, you don't do it this day, you can do it the rest of the days, or if they get that, so that's possible.
I wonder, how are the effects in where you guys are at? Like, do you think it gets hotter, or what do you think? Like when it's chemtrail?
I think it changes the spectrum of the sun is the only thing I notice. Like after we had our sun tracking, and then I looked out at the sun like the next day, and it had a much more golden color to it instead of that white glary color that I'm normally seeing the sun all the time now with all the chemtrails we've been having. So I think it's shifting the spectrum of the sun for some, and I'm not sure exactly what that will do. I don't know. Anybody have any thoughts? They're definitely playing with the sun. They're trying to play with sunlight.
Well, definitely playing with the weather.
Yeah.
It's probably done for a few reasons, not just one.
Well, I was just interested because the day after the sun tracking event and the sky was really clear of chemtrails still, and the sun looked more golden colored than it had looked in a long time. So I think the chemtrails are shifting it more to the white light spectrum.
Wow.
And what would that do?
Possibly affect
no idea. I have no idea.
Well, it could affect how much vitamin D you get in your body, and obviously everyone requires vitamin D to be healthy and have a healthy immune system and stuff like that. It's another one of their tools to whittle people down.
Yeah, that makes sense, actually.
Because vitamin D is gained from sunlight, and that's the best source from it. Yes, you can take, vitamin D supplements and that, but you can't beat the sunlight.
Yeah, for me, it seems like...
Also, shifting the color spectrum.
Sorry. Yeah, for me, it seems like it'll be normal for a few days, with no chemtrails, and then once we get chemtrails, it seems like it heats up. For me, anyways.
That may be. I think also the color spectrum of the sun will affect people's moods because, or young one way, whereas if it's a glary white color, you might feel a different way.
Yeah.
Not sure exactly, but I think it would affect people's mood.
Definitely. If it's darker, you're not getting as much light, so you get, less vitamin D. You're going to feel less energized, I think, from the sun. And, you naturally feel better when you get sunshine out, and as soon as it's cloudy and that, it's a good way of, dampening people's spirits if it's cloudy and miserable every single day. And it's not good for the plants and stuff as well, so I don't know why they would do it. Well, I do, because they've got their nefarious plans.
For me, it seems to go along with the agenda of global warming, that whole farce. Trying to make people think it's getting hotter and hotter, and all the plants are withering up, and all that stuff. But I think it also disproves the globe, because on a globe, you're on an enclosed system. They're pumping all this stuff into the air. You think it would have to go somewhere.
Yeah, I know that from when they've done a lot of mountain research. They would take snow samples from tops of mountains, and they've found that in areas where they thought this geoengineering chemical spraying was going on, the snow levels were massive amounts of aluminum, and I think it was other chemicals involved with that as well. But aluminum was one of the high things, and what they found was that it wasn't good for plants and the bacterial life in the first 2 or 3 inches of the soil. It was actually killing it. But what they found is, there were certain GMO-resistant crops which were designed to ignore the aluminium and those compounds in the soil and just grow happily with that. So,
talking of things growing happily, Robert.
they work. These companies work hand in hand. It would be naive to think they just do everything individually. One can scratch the back of another by designing something that would work alongside. Then that would be in their agenda.
You were telling us a story though off air.
Also,
Which story was that?
I love that story. I love it.
So you were talking. Well, if you start off by telling us about one of the temperature differences that you experienced from indoors to outside, you'll probably know where I'm going.
One of the coldest days of the year when I was in Antarctica on the ice shelf, it was about -55 with a wind chill, which took it to -60, and I was cold, and because I was in charge of the heating, I decided I wanted to be a bit warmer, so I increased the temperature inside quite dramatically as it was cold, and people didn't really appreciate that. But some people liked it hot, some people wanted it cold. But what happened, because it was devoid of all life there's absolutely nothing. The structure was all made of wood, and heating it up for that period actually caused moths and insects in the wood to actually hatch out of their cocoons and casters or whatever they were inside the fabric of the building, and we saw flying things kept flying around.
So the Antarctic Treaty would have us, or dictates that there's no contamination to the ecological systems that are in place, which are non-existent, and they want them to stay that way.
Yeah, we had insects flying around, and it was, I think that was the night after we watched The Thing as well, so that kind of made everyone kind of laugh.
But the Antarctic Treaty is a complete farce, isn't it?
Well, it is. If you've got insects flying around, from a wooden structure that hasn't been decontaminated, or things have managed to creep in, then no, it's not sterile at all.
Add that to the onions full of sewage waste.
Yeah, that just compounds it, doesn't it? Really, with all the other bits that they left in, can't remove.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I understand. At the Russian base, they actually pump the sewage directly into the ocean.
Oh, well, they're just doing it in advance of that. Then instead of putting it in the ice, they're just straight to the sea. I mean, it's kind of backwards way of doing it. There's even sewage in the UK that dumps straight out to sea from towns and land like that, and that's why they have that clean beach act. And certain areas will have a certification to say that the water's purer than others, but it means that they're pouring raw sewage into the sea. A lot of boats do that as well. It's just a cheap way of getting rid of the waste. Not good for the sea.
I was hoping to have a slight change of subject actually to Stephen, if he's willing, and he was talking again off air about one of the hoaxes or false flags, or however you want to describe it, that may not be a false flag, hoax, or other, or to slightly rephrase that, may have been manipulated by the media despite actually being a real event. Do you want to give us a bit of insight into that, Stephen?
Yeah, there's certainly all false flags in the media. They're being portrayed in one way or another for some agenda. But I think that the two recent shootings that were publicized in the media, the two guys who were shot, one guy who was on his back was shot by the police, and another guy who was in his car was shot by the police. Just I just noticed how everyone was kind of jumping right on the hoax bandwagon, and I can agree with a lot of them, like Orlando and what is another one kind of recently? Orlando and Sandy Hook and all of those, those are all clearly hoaxes, but I don't think that these can fall into those categories. When people say, "Oh yeah, this is a hoax because we don't see any gore, we don't see any blood, we don't see people crying," but in these cases, you do see all of those things. Like with the guy who was on his back, if you watch the full video, you can see, him getting shot multiple times in his chest, and then when the camera pans back, there's blood on a car right next to him, obviously from a spurt. I don't see any kind of way that a cop could just, put it on the car right next to him instantly and fake it like that. Blood spatter is a very specialized field. People can really, tell what happened from blood spatter. And to me, that looks like conclusive evidence that he really was shot multiple times in the heart, and he got spatter on the car next to him. And then when he was bleeding out, you could see that it was pulling up around his chest, going onto the ground like it would if you were shot in the heart. He would bleed out very quickly. And I have seen a lot of gory videos. I did a lot of research into that kind of stuff. And when people die, they have a very distinct look that is not easily faked or acted. They have a look as if they're leaving their body. And that's the same thing that happened to the guy in the car. He had that look.
I think you're right, Stephen. They certainly could use natural events or events that would, happen coincidentally. So someone gets shot, or someone, it's a organisation that decides to do something. But they just use that as a spin, an excuse, and then pump it full of propaganda once the event's unfolded to make it sound like a hoax or sound like something different, so they can again use it to their own advantage and push their agenda.
Yes, like there was a recent video that RV put out. It was about how PK Truth and RV made the news, and they were saying about how, all these people are saying that these events are fake, and, basically just pointing and vilifying, and I'm sure that's what they want. They want everyone to be so numb that they're immediately going to say that every event is a hoax, when you can't say that until you can prove it.
Agreed, and I think Hillbilly was looking at it the other day when it was happening, but you can't jump on the hoax thing. He was kind of looking at it from like a military aspect and going around the buildings on Google. What we actually found was there was a huge amount of CCTV cameras where this incident took place, so there's no reason why they wouldn't have footage on it to start with. It's next to a bank as well, and within the bank you can see 5 or 6 cameras pointing inwards, and the dome's all positioned outwards, so they'd have the footage from it, but whether they release it or whether they want to use it for their own ends is another matter.
Is this the Dallas police shooting you're talking about?
Yeah, that's just like an idea. So there's cameras everywhere, so for them not to have the footage, it would be quite hard to believe.
Yeah, that event seems more like a hoax to me because it's something that you need to manufacture. Police shoot people all the time, all the time. But police aren't often shot in that kind of circumstance. And then how they said, "Oh yeah, we used a drone to blow them up," and
yeah, it was rubbish. Yeah, it just sounded quite.
Yeah, that doesn't ring true to me.
Actually, there was a CNN. There was a CNN reporter that was reporting on it, and he said that he didn't know the actor involved. Right on air. I go, actors? He called them actors.
No,
They
that's
did that with
a
the San
misunderstanding, I think,
Bernardino
actually,
shooting.
Robin. Patricia Steer seems to have a habit of being able to pull that apart. So whether that's been stuck in there so that people say, again, wrongly, look, he's even admitting to it being actors. I can't remember exactly what the context that she gave, Patricia Steer, this is. But yeah, that's kind of a misnomer. It's a bit like when that guy was talking about the Earth being flat, and he's dropping it in context, but he's making reference to a book that references, I think it was something like cross-contamination or disease, something like that, carrying across the seas, in terms of the idea that it's easy for stuff to cross continents, and that is in contextually the Earth being flat as an idea, not saying that the Earth is flat. So when people see him saying "and the Earth is flat," he's making a reference to something that's specific to that book. And again, Patricia Steer immediately picked up on that while everyone else was out, banging the drums, going, "Look, this guy's admitting to it on air," and he really wasn't. And I think this is all good, because I'm glad you've made the mistake in a way, Robin, because it's good, because it's exactly the same thing with this, call it whatever you like, hoax, false flag, real event. The media will still get hold of it, and they will still manipulate it to their ends. And I think in this case, Patricia's in the chat. Hopefully she'll pipe up if she's just heard what I've said, and we'll see. But yeah, it's done so that in the case of these shootings, if we say everything's a hoax, it makes us look terrible. It makes us look poorly researched. It makes everything else we say seem nonsensical. So Russian vids, they can say, this flat earther with his nonsense about these events, the guy has no empathy for the people who've died. He's saying there are no deaths, and there are. It takes away all credibility.
Mm-hmm.
It is a pretty bad thing, That's why I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
Well,
What's the one where the guy was in the car? Sorry, Robin.
oh, well, I think one of the things is usually the hoax aspects of it don't come out initially. And I was actually surprised to see this guy use the term actor, like in an initial report. So I don't know. Usually you don't figure out that it's a hoax until after you've looked at it a little more carefully for a few days, or maybe even a couple weeks.
Yeah, that's why it gets suspicious to start coming out immediately and calling it a hoax, because you can't really know immediately. You need to look into it.
Mm-hmm. What's that one where I was watching CNN, but they had the one guy was shot in the car, and the woman's beside him, and then the cops outside. I don't know, like it seemed very real to me, and I didn't really analyze or anything. But I'm like, the way she's acting and everything, I'm like, either if it is fake, she's an amazing actor, So it just, I don't know.
Exactly, like the way that the cop reacted after shooting the guy, people will say, "Oh, that's bad acting. He's overacting." He seemed like he was freaking out to me, like he was panicking.
That's what it seemed like, yeah, because I was sitting watching going, holy crap. And what was going through my mind, is this a hoax? But then I was watching her, and I'm like, wow, it looked real to me, but I don't know. I'm not the best at analyzing this stuff.
What really got me on that one was afterwards, when she got out of wherever she was, there was a bunch of people who were coming up to interview her, and her reaction seemed very legitimate. She was crying, and I can't justify that in any other way. All of these other fake events, like Sandy Hook, the guy who lost his kid, he came out and he was smiling on stage and stuff. This wasn't like that.
I think it's quite important to analyse it correctly and make the right assumptions rather than jumping to the first conclusion that everyone thinks. It is important, and then you do get a clearer picture of what's happening rather than saying everything's a false flag or everything's, it's one particular thing or the other.
Or could it be like, and I don't know. One thing that crossed my mind is, could innocent people being affected and hurt just to propagate an agenda? So they're just collateral damage, right? They're just let's just hurt regular people just so it looks real. I don't know.
Class it as a natural event. That's what I'd class it as. A natural.
Like it's still set up. Yeah, but it's still set up. They're just harming innocent people.
They harm innocent people, make it look natural, there'd be no suspicious circumstances that people could pick it apart, and then you say, oh well, that's a shame. That's really sad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But even the natural disasters will be propagandized.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Same with the wars and all sorts. Yeah.
It's certainly part of an agenda, part of the militarization of the police, becoming more and more like the IDF over time, because they were trained by the IDF, to shoot first and ask questions later. So there are just people who are getting stepped on in the process. But it is part of a bigger picture to set the police against the people.
Yeah. I don't know. In Canada, there's not that racial tension. Like, you don't see that. So I don't know why, like, just from an outsider, because I'm not an American, why there's so much. It seems like work to keep the racial tension going. Like, why is that? Like, it's 2016. Why is that still happening? It just boggles my mind as a Canadian, anyways.
Maybe it has something to do with our president and his race. I don't know. Maybe when we have Hillary as the president, everything will be against women.
Could be. I don't know.
I mean, I always worry that when people scratch the surface on the general mainstream media, that they're going to be led towards the belief in the powers that should not be worshipping Satan, and that with the predictive programming that we're given every single day. Star Wars always is the best example of this. You're left with these ideas of good and evil and power surrounding both. And when people scratch the surface of subliminal messages, and again, Russian vids is a perfect example of this, they're led down a path that leads them to talking about beast systems. I know, Robin, you're a devout Christian, but to me it just all seems like another way of dividing people up by making them believe in nonsense and giving the people who we are told have power, leaving people with the impression that they really do, or that at the very least they're worshipping things that have true nefarious power. And I just think that's all nonsense.
I think they really want to push the agenda to 2030, sustainable development, where they enslave everyone in their system. That's what they're pushing for. So,
one giant megacity. Yeah,
the megacities, and if you're not in that, if you're not in the megacity chipped up, that's it. You're out on the wilds. That's where you are. They really want to push that type of system, and then it means that they have full control of these places rather than people. But
if people are programmed, Robert, people are programmed. They want that. It's like they're so programmed and conditioned. They really want that. They cheer for it. They want that kind of system. A lot of people do. It's not like they're being willfully enslaved. They're just, and then they love it.
Yeah, because it gives them food stamps. They can. Housing subsidies, everything like that props the person up, that they've become reliant on, is the system that they've put in place in the first place to actually ensure that when they decide to say, you're going to go along with whatever we do, if you don't, we'll take away this. And it's a perfect way to get everybody in that system, obey. They have to obey it. There's no option to that. Otherwise, they starve. They don't have a house. All other things fall upon them to do that. And if they can push that would be the easiest way to get rid of people out of houses and move people on because they're not conforming.
Mm-hmm. But wouldn't it be better though if people? Sorry, go, Robin. Go.
You first. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'll just say one thing and then I'm going to mute myself. Okay. Wouldn't it be better if people, like, from their point of view, the powers make people think that they're beating the system or they're whatever, just to create a new one that's much worse than the old one? You know what I mean? Because if people feel like they're a part of what's going on, they'll just do themselves even worse, and they don't even know it. So I have a feeling that's kind of what they might try to do, but it's just, I don't know, just a thought. Anyways, I'm muting myself.
It could be the path that they're trying to lead everyone up. You wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't pretend to know that they're plans, but you can only kind of guess what things they've done from what's happened.
It kind of goes along with this, police versus people thing. They're trying to make it seem like the police are the problem so that they can bring in a new level of police being a global police. Oh, sorry, I said global, worldwide.
Yeah. And it also pushes down their gun route of taking guns away from people, so they can push that even harder, and there's less resistance to do that. So the more
I think they're trying to create a level of dependence in people where that's the way I think they're going to get everybody into the city. Because, like, I live outside of Seattle, so you go downtown and people have a completely different viewpoint. It's like, you have your public transportation, which is very efficient. You can get your groceries delivered very quickly. You don't have to leave your apartment. You can sit and play video games and just live in your little virtual world. Everything is done for you.
This is it.
Right?
I mean, the only way out of it is to do the opposite and actually start to do things for yourself, and if you're in a community, have that community work together. That's all you could do in that situation, but that in itself would work, because if everyone pulled their weight in the community, you could make it could work.
The trouble is that people get put on pedestals, and I've watched this firsthand in the last week. So the tracking the sun is a perfect example. People still want to be spoon-fed information. Now, a lot of us on this panel, in fact, all of us on this panel, took part in that event and have gathered that information. Now, more power to you, Robin. You're the only one so far on this panel that's saying, I want to pull this data apart. Me, I'm dreading going back through it because it's such a huge amount of data. And, it fills me full of dread because of the agony it took to get it in such a short period of time. But I get people saying, when are you going to give me your analysis of this information? It's like, well, the information's there. If Flat Earth has taught me nothing, is that we can do this stuff for ourselves. Pick it to pieces, rip it to shreds, use it to prove them on a globe if you want. More power to you all. But, don't point your finger back at me and say, when are you going to analyse it? Feel free. Knock yourself out. More power to you. That's the whole point. We can do these things ourselves. We can take it upon ourselves. And in terms of buying back into the bullshit media, it's back to not even a figurative way, a metaphorical way. You can just turn off the TV. Worrying about gun control and that, you're only worried about it because you're still tuned into the media.
That's why I don't watch any news at all. I'm aware of it, but don't watch it, and then I don't tend to get sucked into their emotional things. Child dying here, gun taken away there, things to anger you or get the emotions flowing, which they want, negative emotions, and they want to be able to use that to coerce you to their ways.
I just think there's an incredible amount of dependence within the modern society. A few years back, we had this huge windstorm in Seattle, and people, just everything just fell apart because there was no electricity. There was no gas coming in. The roads were clogged. There's trees over the roads, and the whole Puget Sound area was completely locked up. And I was living in an apartment area, and nobody had even a small amount of food put away in their apartment. They had enough food for one day, and then they were going to starve. And fortunately, it was like Christmas time, and so I'd made a bunch of Christmas cookies to give to people, and I couldn't get out to give them their Christmas cookies. So I was giving boxes of Christmas cookies to everybody in the apartments, and they lived on Christmas cookies. But what if I hadn't been there to make Christmas cookies? They would have starved. They would have gone literally without food. They had no heat. They didn't, there are just about every apartment in Seattle has a fireplace, but we don't have any air conditionings, but we do have a fireplace. And they were going, well, the store has run out of wood. And there were all these trees blown down. I'm picking up branches, and I going, what do you think this is? But it's not firewood. I said, it's wood. It will burn. Trust me. That's just the level of, I'm telling you, that's the level people are at in these days. They don't understand how the world around them, outside of their little, urban, area is. It's just they don't understand. They don't know how things work.
No, this is true. They do dumb down education. They certainly push false history, which can cause that effect on people. And with the education standards so much lower than they were 50 years ago or 40 years ago, when you look back at what people could do then to mental arithmetic to nowadays, then yeah, it all goes along with their agenda control, which is, ensure that everyone under humanity is controlled by them through all these means that they're implying. So the more that people are aware of what not to do, it's going to be the best thing to do. It's going through all these things that people need to do. Be aware. It's like the vaccines are a good example, or the criminalisation of Christianity. Making modernisation of heterosexual and homosexuality, and the LGBT is a perfect example of them pushing all their agendas of making people to conform with these multiple bathrooms, especially in these supermarkets and places where you can get these paedophiles and weirdos that want to pretend to be women and then go in there and abuse these people. And it has happened, and they've got big paedophile rings in the UK as an example of what still goes on and has gone on. It all goes along with their elite program and the things that they discuss in the UN and the things that they discuss at their Bilderberg meeting.
Well,
this is something that Thomas Sheridan exposes in terms of connections to the royalty with Jimmy Savile. And the paedophile rings.
But they hide a lot of that. The royalty is rife with that kind of stuff. But it's all hidden, and they all got their orders not to say anything, so the police would have their orders, from the Crown, and the same with the military, and the same with all the other things, and they'd have people that would be employed to silence it or get it out of the media. So those people would be almost immune from it, like all the other war criminals and people that have got away with it in the past that still get away with it now. Tony Blair and Hillary Clinton and
all of this is designed.
Sorry, you go on, Robin.
Oh yes, all of this is designed to destroy individuality, because if you don't even have a gender, how can you be an individual? And to destroy independence. So they destroy your sense of self. They destroy your sense of independence. You're completely dependent, and you have no sense of who you are, and they can completely control you at that point.
And if you don't agree with them, you're not tolerant. But,
Which brings me to a subject I thought about yesterday. You notice in all of the kids' shows or in the James Bond shows or whatever, they always have like this person known as the mad scientist, right? And the thing about the mad scientist is the mad scientist is usually doing some very amazing research and development, but he's doing it outside of the world of academia and outside of the world of government. So does our research make us mad scientists?
Yeah, in the eyes of the media. Oops, bit of feedback. Oh, don't know why. Hopefully that's gone. Anyway, yeah, in the eyes of the media, we are lunatics.
Pure
That's fine with me.
Yeah.
Coming back to Tony Blair, my wife had a live show on, just trying to remember the name, The Last Leg. Now, I don't think this is usually live. I don't know if it was a special event or something, but I happened to catch a bit. And it went to an ad break, and they were telling you about the next pieces on the show. Laugh, laugh, laugh. And then in between a few of those gags, they said, coming up on the show, should Tony Blair be tried for war crimes? Ha, 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 on to the next gag, ad break. And this is on a comedy show, and you're like, this is how these questions are being posed to the nation on some comedy show? This isn't really, really serious?
No, they like to make a joke of it, and then it becomes kind of non-important. Then people think, oh, it's just Tony Blair, with the thing. But yeah, he's got away with it. They always cover for each other in those situations.
Yeah, but it could be, it could be war crimes, but it wasn't against them. It did the agenda they kind of wanted it done anyways. So even though it's a war crime, it doesn't really affect them. So ha ha ha. No,
because the military-industrial complex got their money for, having another 10, 20-year war for nothing.
Yeah.
But the Antarctic Treaty's used as a perfect example of all these people being hands across the ocean, in a very literal way. And as Robert is slowly picking apart, it's in and of itself, the notions it stands for are complete nonsense. They are not adhered to. So what are we left with? Well, we're left with the hands across the ocean bit they're all in cahoots.
Cahoots, and the same thing with war, and the same thing with military, and the same thing with their drug supply across the world.
Precisely.
It's all hand in hand. I mean, when the British went to Afghanistan, the thing they ended up doing was guarding the poppy fields, and doing that. And now what happens is, it was, I think it was 50 or 70% that they were supplying across the world. Now it's kind of jumped up a lot higher. I don't know numbers, and I don't go on numbers. I know that when these countries gone in, the poppy production in the countries soared, which means that heroin and opiates, which the medical and pharmaceutical companies need as well, so it's good business for everyone. That's the way these people look at it.
And the media just spins this on shows that Seth MacFarlane will do. I remember Cleveland, selling cookies, and he thinks he's sending out these kids to sell cookies, and in reality, of course, they're all selling crack. And when they capture his son, the drug dealers, and hold him to hostage, all the kids come through by chucking in their bits of drugs until his long-lost brother turns up with a kilo of Afghani heroin.
Yeah, it's again mockery in the movies, and truth in that. They like to do that.
That's it. Lies in the news and truth on TV and movies.
Yeah,
as Russian vids would say.
Yeah.
I have a friend. If he's watching, I'm really sorry, Russian vids.
I have a friend who was in Afghanistan from 2007 to 2012, and he told me about how they got all these people to grow opium and sell it for them, basically by going around with CIA spooks, telling people that if they don't, they'll be killed, and that's what happened.
Yeah, so the poppy production has gone up massive amount, which means that now they're processing much larger amounts of heroin, so the increase in the demand has gone up everywhere because they can do it and they're allowed to do it. Where I think when previously, many years ago, it wasn't half as much as it was now. It was balanced across the world, I think, a lot more.
Yeah, and now even here in like a small little town called Simi Valley, known as Cop City around Los Angeles, you have more heroin than ever. Like the other year they busted these people with like a $7 billion heroin op, and these were just some low-level people. That they're not, going around and shipping it around themselves and producing it themselves. It's the government.
They have their own supply people that they have within the government that will deal with the country that sells, the money that the government get from dealing drugs. The same as the CIA were caught so many times doing this, time after time after again. The same with all countries. They all have their finger in the pie of drugs around the world. So do the pharmaceutical companies, because that's where they get their opiates from. When we take painkillers, when we take codeine, all that comes from these places. It comes to the places that produce the most. So once Afghanistan was invaded and they did what they needed to do, that meant they could put the military in these places, have operatives in these places, and then make sure that these places are growing the stuff and it's going to where they want it to go. So the country is not selling it off to other countries. Sorry. So it's a big network. It's like a big spider network, the same as the paedophile ring, but it's just a part of the drug ring, and the people that tend to be mostly in charge are the top of the drug lords that control the pyramid and hand that down, and then the governments as well with that. Because they can get away with a certain amount, but they pay the government off. They wouldn't be able to get away with it without doing so. So the government benefits from it. It's another little backhanded envelope in the pocket, kind of, for the governments.
One of the things that
bribes, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but obviously big money.
They also prime the population to be susceptible to drug addiction because so many children now are given psychoactive drugs in school, or they're required to take psychoactive drugs when they go to school because they say, oh, this child's ADD or they're hyperactive or whatever, and they're giving them Ritalin and all these other crazy psychoactive drugs, all kinds of serotonin suppressive reuptake inducers that are like they have no idea what the effect on the the juvenile mind, what it's going to do to their brain, and then later on they're finding that these same kids that were given all these psychoactive drugs are taking drugs as adults.
I think they do know. I think they know precisely what result it's going to have on the population, and they know that you're going to get a good percentage of people that will decide to do that, or be forced to do that through the indoctrination and the cognitive dissonance of taking things without actually knowing what you're taking. The same as people drink drinks that they know not what's in it. They just drink aspartame like it's water.
Well, as we're talking of water, a lot of this is going to be seeping into our water supplies. We drink recycled water,
well,
and
all
there's
the
currently a
medical
lot of these
stuff.
chemicals from these tablets, pills, and potions that just seeps straight back into the water supply.
Yep, when us being a plumber and us being well aware of what they do water tests in all countries around the world to check the water supplies suitable, and certain countries will have set limits for all the bacteria and lead and arsenic and whatever else in these supplies, and you'd be surprised if you look in your local, if you can get the details, and if they release it. Some places won't, but most in the UK will. They have to publicise it and make it public knowledge, just so you know what's in there. But when you're checking through the list, it's horrific, some of the stuff that's in there.
Are they testing for levels of estrogen and stuff like this?
No, they won't worry about that. Nothing pharmaceutical at all is mentioned in there. But there are pesticides, nitrates, and stuff like that. But some of the levels go over, and they didn't seem to be bothered with it. The results went out.
So they're just testing stuff that potentially seeping in from the water table. Is that what you're saying?
From the water table and where they get it from. So pharmaceutical medicines and fluoride and stuff like that, they can't filter it out. They'd have to use a distilling type of system or something high compact, multi-layered filter system, and they're not going to do that. So all tap water that comes out is as it is from where it's produced in the water plant. So where they put the chlorination in, because most water in the UK is chlorinated, not fluorinated, which is a lot better, because fluoride is, it's deadly. It's not a good thing. Chlorination is just as bad, but it's not as toxic as fluoride immediately.
I've seen the footage though of them pouring it into the water supply, and they're fully masked up.
Oh, they'd be masked up, suited up completely, because it's highly toxic. And I've been to these water plant facilities where I could actually walk around and look. So I know the areas that they have, and it's skull and crossbones, and big thing at the door saying don't enter. Because you're dealing with something that if you inhale all that fluoride, it'll kill you instantly.
That footage you're talking about, I'm pretty sure it was actually my friend who was in Afghanistan who made that footage. Yeah, his name's Brett. He's like pouring a big 50-pound bag of fluoride into the water.
Yeah,
really?
They do do it. Yeah, it's deadly. I mean, you don't see it often, and you'll be very rare to see it. But I know in the UK there's 2 or 3 places that they like to dose it with fluoride. Lancashire and Manchester, pretty much places where they like to put it in. So I mean, at least that's why if you get a cheap water distiller, it's going to burn off a lot of the chemicals in that. Just by
the charcoal filters will not filter out the chlorine and fluoride?
No, you have to get a specialised fluoride filter which will take it out. It's kind of got like some metal derivative that captures the fluoride. So yeah, just even a multi-cartridge filter that will take out, nitrates and a small amount of pharmaceuticals and other bad things. It won't filter the fluoride or the chlorine. Chlorine, you can only get rid of that by allowing it to stand in water. So if you just leave it in a jug in the fridge after it being filtered, then the chlorine will actually evaporate from that. Not with fluoride, you have to filter it out or use a steam type of distiller.
Well, in Birmingham, I actually went and saw this. The water was exceptional. Very, very good water.
It changes from region to region, believe it or not. And I've gone from lots of different regions, and some of it you drink it and think, good God, it's awful. You know,
But certainly the part of Birmingham that I used to live in,
tastes
we
like
had friends that would travel up from London to get water to put in their batteries. That's how good the water was where we were. And it came from Elan Valley.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that. No, I mean, some areas depends where they take the water source from, whether it's reservoir, whether it's like the chalk drilled boreholes, which it can be in some areas, and different areas have different levels of filtration. So in a chalk area, you're going to get a lot of rock and mineral deposits, wherein some areas are actually more solid, so you just get more of a filtered kind of gravel system that goes through. But it's interesting to see.
My folks had exactly that. So they had two different water supplies in their farm in Wales. It's on the Welsh border. But one was literally, it trickled out the side of the hill. And that, if you were pregnant, you couldn't drink it, even after going through a whole bunch of water filters. But then they had a borehole drilled, and it was immaculate. The water wasn't anywhere near as good as the water in Birmingham. This was kind of my point. And it's really pretty, actually, up in Elan Valley with all the reservoirs that they've dammed up. And someone was telling me that one of them had a church in, and occasionally when it goes down enough, you can actually see the top of the church in one of these reservoirs that they've dammed up. Really, really pretty, especially when it's flowing over the top of them. But as a net result of all this, again, I'm just told this whether or not it's fact, but very old Victorian pipework, the water was just exceptionally well, it was designed well from the off, and it still works well now, so the water's nice.
It's true. A lot of the old pipework was probably better than some of the new pipework. I know with boreholes, in the UK, because there's not so much fracking like the US, you don't get too much chemical ground contamination. So when you have a borehole that's drilled anywhere from 10 meters to 40 meters down, that's the average height from a standard house one to a commercial one.
This one wasn't. This one was massively deep. I mean, they were at the top of a hill, so it went on for a long time. I mean, they kept on feeding it and feeding it and feeding it. It kept on going down and down. They said, "We'll hit water eventually." They just kept drilling.
It's going to be really pretty pure after it's gone through that much rock and ground to filter it out. That's why it is so pure, and that's why anyone that's got a borehole in this country tends not to come under the regulations on that, as long as they've not got their main supply connected to the cold water main. So if you can just use a borehole and feed your whole house, and then you could be under your own complete regulation, because then it's up to you to test the water to ensure it's fit to drink. But most of them type of properties will have a standard UV filter and perhaps a particle filter, because it's pulled from a well. You'll get residue and stuff from that pumped up.
Oh yeah, the whole underside of their house was nothing but filters and crazy lights. It looked like a mad scientist lab, because there are two systems of water. And the one that came out the hill, that when Evian described this, you think, oh wow, it must be beautiful. But you've only got to have a heavy downpour, and suddenly your water's brown.
Yeah, full of peat and muck and whatever else is washed down with it.
Yeah, that's it. They had a third one as well, actually. They had a water pump at the top of the hill. It was literally just like a standing well that you could pump. For, again, the water after the first couple of pumps would be completely brown, but then it would start to filter, and then you get crystal clear water out of it. It's just groundwater.
What's this?
Just pulling water out of the ground. No big deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, with pulling out the water from your ground, once you do that, then if you've got a power supply that you can produce electricity, say solar powered, that could power a little 12-volt pump, then you're not paying anything for your water supply. So it's the initial borehole that you'd have to drill, and then that's it. It's your water then. You don't have to pay a water bill.
Yeah, but it's about £15,000.
It is, yeah, because they have to drill the hole, they have to line it. They can't just do it without that. And then you've got to have the infrastructure, so a pipe put down there, filters and everything else. So it's like having a solar powered installation. It's it would range from that type of price.
Yeah, well, they did it after a drought. So for I can't remember how long, it was quite a while ago, but they were literally having to travel for miles to get water, and you don't realise until it happens, till you run out of water. you just can't comprehend it. And I think Robin was saying earlier, most people don't know they're born. Well, where they live, they're on a farm. Yeah, they had electricity, but that's it. They've got no phone line. They're using satellites to get a phone. But yeah, it's totally isolated. You're getting your own heating, you're getting your own wood to heat the place, and you're getting your own water. And I know there's a couple of people who we talked to, ADR being one of them, who may even be in the chat. And he's the same, he's out in the sticks and he has to do it for himself. But for him, he's very disconnected from propaganda. So for him, coming to Flat Earth is much easier.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I know. I think it's all about being more connected with where you are. But for people who've found an easy route to Flat Earth through YouTube, it's very easy to sort of point at the people making videos like us and go, give me the proof for this. And it's like, well, Flat Earth's taught me that I can have a look for myself. Go and have a look.
There's enough videos out there, and there's enough choice, there's enough people that have done clues and other aspects of it, so it's up for everyone to just look. You can't be told, these people come in and they do their comments and they're like kind of asking to be taught like at school. No, you go out and look with your own eyes and then check for yourself and experiment, and then you know for yourself whether what you're saying is correct or not. Don't take anyone's assumption, and I never do. So that's why I go and do my flat Earth experiments to see whether it works or not.
Well, Bob was talking about this on Globebusters just a couple of hours ago and saying about the trolls that come along and criticise and tell us what we're taught in school, like we don't already know. And for somebody to come along with constructive criticism and constructive proof for the globe or debunking anything to do with Flat Earth, all of us are all for that. But people who come along and shout and swear, or worse still, like with backtracking the sun, when people come along and say, we've already figured this out. It's like, well, okay, so if you're saying there's nothing to see here, why are you looking and commenting? Just go away. And furthermore, we're actually just double checking. There's no harm in checking. Even if we were, let's pretend for a moment that we were all heliocentric believers, would it receive the same sort of ridicule because we've got the words Flat Earth in the title? We're just checking. Just making sure. What's the harm in that?
Look at the nice sun pictures around the world, and they wouldn't even comment anything other than that. Just we're filming a 24-hour sunset around the world, and it's because people don't understand, and because they're so indoctrinated in their beliefs. That's why they get confused. Unfortunately,
but even if you believe it, even if you're a wholehearted believer, there's no harm in checking. There's no harm in making absolutely certain that what they show us on time and date and all the rest of the software that they present to us, well, what's the harm in double checking it? We can do it. There's no cost involved whatsoever. Who cares? Let's just do it. It shouldn't have any ridicule, but yet it still does because the people doing it are flat earthers.
Yeah.
And we found out time and date works so well.
Yeah, but people that get mad at the sunrise stuff, it's possibly because what they believe may not be true. Otherwise, why would they get mad?
But I just don't see the point in saying nothing to see here. It's like, why tell people there's nothing to see? It just makes zero sense other than to demonstrate to the people who read that comment, if you're cognitively sound, that the person writing that comment is in the midst of cognitive dissonance, that they are finding an emotional reaction to something that they could just easily ignore. If there is literally nothing to see here, get on with your day. Don't worry about what we're doing. Don't worry about it.
So move on.
Or they could be gatekeepers.
Yeah.
Could be.
Ooh.
Or just people trying to make themselves feel better about their spinning ball.
I agree. I think it's just people that are just, we've seen this reaction. We see it hundreds of times, and when they actually come forward as real people, and you can go, oh, that was just a dude, but the other ones are gatekeepers, paid shills. I know these labels get banded around a bit, but I don't know. I think half the time it's just the programming, the systems that are in place are that good that they can turn normal, average Joe into a screaming, ranting maniac when you mention the words flat Earth. There's a good reason why Neil deGrasse Tyson says words like, the Earth is flat, from your position on the Earth if you're looking out from your, and so on and so forth. He keeps those words in our vocabulary, in the scientific vocabulary, or the glitzy Hollywood scientific vocabulary, so that people hear it and will have an emotional response against it. They've already processed the cognition to say, well, yeah, you can see it from that point of view, but that's nonsense. We know better and have done for hundreds of years. But why take the word of dead men? You know, it might be written down. It might even be correct, but no harm in checking.
Yeah.
Well, I think also, too,
sorry, go on.
what we were discussing about people becoming very dependent on this infrastructure and on this system. And so they have this system just kind of wraps around them, this system of beliefs and infrastructure. And so they're so dependent on it. And if there's any inkling that the world as they know it may not be what it is, it terrifies them. And so they do go into, it's cognitive dissonance, but I think it's deeper than even that.
Mm-hmm.
I want an answer from anybody who wants to give it. So in the chat, somebody's asked probably number one question I get asked in the comments on those Sun videos. What's the result?
What is the result? The result is that we have shown that the behavior of the sun as it transits the Earth cannot possibly be demonstrated on a globe. We have over and over again shown that the sun is visible to people on two different sides of the globe where it should be over the horizon based on its position.
I think that was fairly conclusive.
Yes, I mean, I want to try to pull everything apart and say, look, here's this video, they're here, these people are here. If the Earth is a globe or 300, you know, if it's a globe and it's at 23.4 degree tilt, you cannot have the sun setting here and rising here because they're too far over the curve.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Robin. I tuned into, I would say, 90% of the footage. I was there in the background. Occasionally, some of the hosts would hear the voice of me come from nowhere. But I was watching most of it, and you did this live. Am I wrong?
Yes, I did. Well, I was muted because they were taking reports from other people, but I like, do you have your laugh track?
Not to hand.
I was taking the one where it was setting in Massachusetts, right? Let's see, where's Massachusetts? Okay, here's Massachusetts, right? The globe is at and it was rising in Perth. Now, if you look at where these two are, and that's on the opposite side, so you can't say, well, the sun is more visible. This is the completely opposite side of the world. I mean, one is in the southern hemisphere, the other's in the northern hemisphere over here. There's Massachusetts. There's Perth. I mean, the difference between the two is, you know, you can't make it work. I mean, and there were
someone just said, what's your empirical data? Well, it's there, done live. You know, it's one of those. Right at the start, we had a guy said, I've took my footage from this time earlier, and it's like, no, it's got to be live. We've got to verify that you're holding a camera at your sun, at your location. Antonio pointed this out early on. The time didn't even matter.
No, well, I mean, you had people in real time saying, I can see the sun rising in Perth, and the girl in Massachusetts in Boston was saying, I can see the sun setting in Boston. They were like just a minute difference in time from when they gave their two pronouncements. So they were doing it at the same time.
They showed us. That was what we said about 400 times in the show. It must have been probably 400 plus times. But, you know, we kept saying, just point your phone at the sun so it's logged. You know, even if you just tuned in and you can't hear and you haven't figured it out, if you immediately point it at the sun, it's logged. It's there permanently. And anybody can go back through the data, the empirical evidence, and see it for themselves. They can have a look. They're not pretending. They're not filming a TV screen. They're holding their camera to the sun at those times, at the same time. It's as self-evident as that.
And then, like the girl in Massachusetts. Let's see, where in Massachusetts? There we go. There we go. Massachusetts, right? And she's saying, okay, if the sun is setting, that means the sun is, okay, let me see. Okay, it'd be over here, right? So the sun is setting, it's going over here, but she's saying it's setting towards the northwest, which would be going this way. So how is the sun setting over this way? You know, the sun is not going over the top of the globe. The sun, if the sun was down here, she said it should be setting in the, at least somewhere in the, at least west, south of west, but not northwest. But when you go to the Gleasons, if the sun is setting to the northwest, right, and here's Perth, well, gee, the sun must be somewhere right in here. And it's looking northwest. Perth is looking northwest.
Am I correct in saying that the Kobayashi does put Australia slightly further over?
Well, they tilted it because they say in the summertime the sun goes in a direction southwest where they can't figure out how it could be there. So that the western part of Australia may be tilted, and we may be able to see this a little more clearly at the equinox. Right now we can't because it means it's the solstice, and so deep winter solstice you might not see that behavior. But at the equinox we may be able to. That's why I think it's a good idea to do another of these at the equinox, because we may be able to get some recordings from the southern regions where you'll get some of these anomalies that are more evident. And the sun will be right at the equator at that point, too.
Yes, it'd definitely be good to do the next one. And I think now that we've done it once, it's always like this when you try anything new. It's stressful and frantic the first time, but then once you've got your legs, you know, you can do it a bit better the second time with a bit more prep. Ideally, if we do it again, I would want to do it the same. In other words, not try and add anything to it. I know the amount of people who've said, why didn't they have this gadget or that gadget? And frankly, I just think, well, yeah, anybody who wants to come along and bring a gadget with them and show us more information, give us more data, wonderful, so long as primarily we capture the sun immediately, you know, from them at sunrise or sunset. You know, beyond that, tuning in at 11 o'clock with your absolutely astonishing apparatus and all the apps in the world isn't very useful, you know, in that particular test. So I would want to refine it, but keep it the same in a way. Have people be more fussy about the time they tune in. But on the first attempt, you kind of want to encourage people, because there were so many people that took part that struggled with the technology. You know, it's not simple technology. It's easy when you know how, but for anybody who doesn't know how, it's far from simple. So just getting people to tune in was I was overwhelmed with how many people tried and eventually succeeded and managed to share valuable data just through their own tenacity.
I mean, they did really well.
It was wonderful. Yeah, it was wonderful. And the one thing is, they don't need a one of these fancy compass mechanisms or something. If they can just give us a rough direction, like it's sort of northwest or it's sort of northeast, that gives us a lot to go on. I mean, like you say, we learn something every time. We learn something new every time somebody gave us their report.
That's good.
Yeah, that was it. When you got the odd troll, and it literally was the odd troll, that didn't want to share any useful data. They just gave you. In fact, I think it was Robert. You got one of these, and he came on with no camera.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, it got booted out of chat for trolling in chat, and then decided to come on live and do the same thing. So that's
moaning that he hadn't got enough say.
Yeah, moaning he hadn't got enough say, and then I said, right, that's fine. Show your son. If you don't want to show your son, off you go.
I had one troll, but he was at a dead time, so I used it to show, okay, we just got this report from this person over here, and I was showing him the globe and explaining how it doesn't work, and just using him as my straight man for showing how the globe doesn't work on our sun reports. So finally he gave up and left.
Yeah, but even Tim Osman, to his credit, shared his sun with us. Yeah, it was at a pretty useless time, but he still did it. You know, I put out appeals to people like Flat Earth Vancouver to take part, and afterwards, in a string of messages, it got to talking about mirroring the video because Patricia had talked about him, and I politely requested that he mirrored the entire video so that more eyes could be on the test. Instead, he snipped out the bit where Patricia's talking about him, and it suddenly dawned on me, this guy has no desire to promote anything to do with Flat Earth. His only desire is to promote himself, and himself is a trolling arsehole. You know, again, back to Bob on Globebusters earlier.
I have to second that, Nathan, because he's done a similar thing to me, you know, accusing me of this and accusing me of that, and he doesn't even bloody know me, so, you know, he's just an idiot, as far as I'm concerned. You know,
Yeah,
he
but
hasn't got any intention of doing research or working with people or actually trying to get people together to do this research and actually check it out. You know, all his intent is actually causing aggravation and trying to cause people upset. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't work for me, Vancouver, BC. I couldn't give a crap what you say. So, yeah, that's
it. It has no actual relevance to Flat Earth, and yes, he's in this arena. Why he's picked this particular niche, but he's only interested in his own publicity. So he moans when people will make response videos. He moaned at me for not putting a response video on my main channel because it hadn't given him enough publicity. And you think, God, you're not interested in the actual topic that you're bringing up or my rebuttal to it. Your only concern is how much publicity you get. And yet these are the very people pointing fingers, calling people, you know, out on being in the, I can't remember how it was phrased, like the TMZ type people. You're like, no, you're the ones that are like that. We're looking at how the sun works and talking about how there is no curvature. You know, that's very different.
And how the sun's going to look on this particular model and whatever model. Yeah, we're thinking outside that. All his concern is, and a lot of these people that troll, their concern is of nothing to do with Flat Earth or anything to do with research. It's just purely their own agenda for their own ends.
Yeah, and it's a YouTube end. I mean, don't get me wrong, obviously we're all on YouTube, but when you're literally only interested in subscribers, but yet telling your subscribers to F off, and it beggars belief that the logic, there isn't any.
Well, I was surprised in the sun tracking event how few trolls they were, especially since we had published the link to actually come into the chat. It was almost like a case of, you know, okay, hey, we're here, put up or shut up. And a lot of them just couldn't put up.
Yeah. Well, we had a guy on, I can't remember what his name, but another trolley type character, and he came in and told us we were doing it all wrong. You've missed your opportunity, you've missed the solstice. And it's like, well, we came up with this idea after. So, you know, we've immediately done it. I couldn't think of anything being, you know, put together in a shorter period of time. It was about a week from discussing it seriously to actually it happening, and that was after the solstice. But he wouldn't let it go. It's like, no, well, I've taken pictures. It's like, well, that's good for you locally. We're right here, right now, whilst having this conversation, doing the test now, and you've come on with your avatar, no picture of the sun, to tell us we've done it wrong. You're like, oh, sod off. Go away.
Yeah. Time wasters, that's what I call them, time wasters.
The best guy there he was a globalist. He was the guy that moderated the Certeticism versus Rhetoric debate, and it's Sean Hufford. And he came in, he was the guy that had, you know, he was explaining how to set up a protractor with a plumb line to get the angle to the sun. He had a filter on a camera, a camcorder filming it. More power to him. More guys like that. If everybody had that set up, wow, it would be the most phenomenal test ever. Yeah. But people like that don't understand that the type of person that's sharing it at the spur of the moment on a bus stop, you know, they're sat with their 4G connection watching YouTube going, sun's setting here. They've just got to be able to figure out real quick how to get on. If they read the description and say, you must have the Theodolite app, you must have a plumb line. No, oh, I don't want to seem like an idiot.
I haven't got my science kit for doing that. I don't think I'll take part. You know, that's
Exactly.
the general mind of it of a person. They just think, no, it's too much bloody effort. I'm not going to bother. I'll just go for the simple option of watching it and not take.
Why don't we
Or
have kids
trolling the
to
chat.
send out next?
Or that type of person is the type of person that whilst watching the video would be in the chat saying, the sun's setting here, and I'm watching the chat going, get in here quick. Oh, I haven't got my theodolite app. I don't know which direction to the sun I'm facing. Doesn't matter. Just tune in and tell us where you are. I don't want to look stupid.
Nathan, next time you can have a sunrise kit that you can mail out to people and they can buy for so much money, kind of thing. What do you think?
They've already bought one when they bought the phone that they've got in their back pocket. That was kind of my point. They've got all the kit they need.
Yeah.
Everything they need is just the internet connection, and that for some people is very complicated. In some areas, they don't have that internet connection. The Wi-Fi works 3 feet from their Wi-Fi spot, and then when they take the laptop outside, I know every one of you experienced this. Yeah, it works. Got your lovely face. That's great. Can you show us your son? Yeah. Bye.
We still got a lot. Still got some.
Oh, it was huge. Like you say, the amount of data we got, and every single sun share was useful to some degree or another. There was no single person that you'd say, well, that was a waste of time. Not at all. Even the people who tuned in and chatted that didn't share their sun, often they had really good insight. All came back and shared their sun at the appropriate time. They were just testing their camera.
A lot of people did that. They'd say, well, I'm just popping in to test my camera, and then after I've tested it, then what I'm going to do will be to come in at sunrise or sunset, and they popped back however many hours later and jumped in. So that was kind of nice for them to do that, and it's a good thing for them to test the equipment. You're going to get good pictures, and we did get good pictures from the people that said they were going to come back. So it's worth it. When someone's standing there for 10, 20 minutes, half an hour, or an hour, or however long, holding the camera phone, it's not the easiest thing, and to do that for a long period, it makes it a lot better, for people's effort. It's not the easiest thing.
There was a really lovely moment afterwards that I just got to share on the 5th. I think it was the 5th hangout, the last one. So there was a guy in Birmingham, and he was from where I was born and raised. It was really weird for him to be the last person tuning in, and he got a beautiful sunset. And after the hangout had finished, everybody left the hangout, but for some reason he hadn't left the hangout. So I set up the next hangout, number 5, and I'm like, look, this is just for me to unwind. No one's going to be joining me, although GIR did actually join. But nonetheless, I said, look, this is just for me to watch my sunset. Why not? I've got the hangout set up. But I went to connect on the phone to point out the window at the sunset, and he was still in the hangout praying. And he had a really good voice. So I know they wouldn't call it singing. That would probably be quite offensive to call it that because it's praying. But he was really, just gave me goosebumps. I was like, oh, wow, his feet singing. At the end of his hangout, he's just put the phone down and started praying. It's like, so he's been stood there for probably an hour and a half, literally just stood there like this, with arm ache. So boring. But, it was a really wonderful way to round it out with just a spectacular looking sunset. And again, he was in, letterbox, whatever you call it, pillar box mode. It didn't matter in the slightest. It was still a wonderful moment.
I finished the day off when the sunrise in the UK to the sunset in the UK, and finishing it off, it was a good event. And anybody who wants to check the details and on that, then they can just look at Nathan's channel and get all the 24 hours footage on that, and it's there for everyone to see.
Yeah, if you've got double speed, definitely that's the time to use it. Yeah. It's been a fairly abrupt and impromptu show, guys. Was there anything you wanted to round out with? We might as well keep it short and sweet.
I do. I have something to say.
Well, I was gonna actually round out. I think I might know what it is. You've just become an uncle, haven't you?
Well, it wasn't about that, but yeah, I am an uncle.
Well done.
Yes. Well, I didn't do it. I'm just the uncle.
Okay.
It's your first time being an uncle, though, isn't it? So you must be excited.
That's nice.
Yeah. Really, really cute kid. I was blown away.
Hang on a second. I'm going to stipulate something here. It's your twin brother that's had this kid. So to say it's a cute kid is almost a self-indulgence.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. He's good.
No,
His name's Isaiah.
Isaiah. Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Nice.
I wanted to say something really fast that we talked about earlier, but I don't know. Are you closing the show right now or what?
Nah, not at all. You say what you like.
Well, we were talking earlier, and I said I actually went today to see the new Independence Day, and just one line in the whole movie caught my attention more than anything else. And I'm so bad with names. Jeff Goldblum, the guy who plays his dad in the movie, was in a. Do you remember his name?
The older chap, no, I don't.
Yeah, what I'm so bad with names. But he's in a school bus with kids, and one of the kids said, "My dad said space is fake," and then he says, "Your dad's a putz," and they keep driving, and I'm like, "What?
What?
Why would they just say that in the movie? Like, it's crazy. It's like, wow, I don't know. It just kind of blew my mind that they'd actually do that in such a big movie like that. Have to address that issue, you know?
Same as Neil deGrasse Tyson saying the Earth is flat from your point of view on the ground. It's keeping that ridicule there at a very subconscious level.
Yeah, it's like the new generation. There's a new generation, in a sense, waking up to that, so they have to make fun of it. You know, it's really odd. Anyway.
It's one of the tags I put onto the videos, fake space. So.
Yeah, I hear people state it like, oh, they think the Earth is still flat, like it ever stopped being flat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that gets spun out into Mandela. That really makes me cringe. Do you think it's a possibility that they just changed the shape and no one noticed, and then we all had our memories erased, and then, no, it was always flat.
No.
It's changed.
Yeah.
On that note, I think I might say a big, massive thank you to everybody who's been on the panel. So, big thank you to Stephen Chess.
Yeah.
And
No
Robin Poe. So, anybody going to say anything? It's all silent.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Nathan.
Let's do it.
Robert Shortman.
Yeah, cheers, Nathan.
And Adam Joseph Doherty.
Thank you for having me, man.
Who have tuned in to Flat Earth UK Live. Thank you very much for joining us. I've been Nathan Oakley. I'll see you all in the next video.